this life is about centering love. And so, what I particularly mean by that is first starting with self love, starting with take care of yourself, pay attention to how you're feeling, be proactive about your self care and the things that make you feel good and healthy from a full cup. That is when then you can offer that love to others, whether that's in the workplace, to your family, etc. But you are your best self when you love yourself and take care of yourself. And I think if you start there, all the other things, whether it is financial, social, professional, etc., are going to flow from there.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, I like to honor our guests right here because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive, their time. 24 hours has been offered to every one of us here on this planet. What we do with that time will tell me much about you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It has deposited some information, some data into Zee, and we want access. But to get access into that, she has to become vulnerable to us and allow us to see her in her beauty, if you will. And so we want to honor her and thank her for coming and allowing us to see who she is while we're here for this moment. Thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
It is an honor. And I alluded to you first about the two offices that we occupy when we embark on the journey. The first is to love self, and the other is to that servant individual. And once we located our assignment. So my question to you is this: how do you serve mankind?
Believe that I am here to help people to feel better within themselves. So all the things that I do fall under that category. I spend a lot of time teaching mindfulness practices, self care practices, and particularly breath work, and how through breathing practices, you can feel better, especially during periods of challenges, emotional challenges, stress, etc. So that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Breath work, I tell people breath in my meditation as I learned the power of the breath. And the breath is the bridge between the natural and the supernatural realm. And when one understands that and work with that, you can transition from the natural realm into the supernatural to go get your things. Psychologists would call that realm the quantum field, if you will, and that breath is able to escort you there. And then it is the place in the church, they call it the heavenly places. So it's the same location, different languages, but one transition or travels there through the breath. It is the bridge that escorts us into that other realm. So guys, this is going to be some fun. Someone is here to teach us how to utilize that aspect of our being. One of our customs here, we have a couple of them. Threads of Enlightenment is to go back. I call it the beginnings of our beginnings. And this is where we learn a couple of things right here. The first space that we reside before we exit, heading to become an adult, if you will. And that location is called the family. At this location, we have these two individuals that are heading up this organization, if you will, and they're called mom and dad. And here you and I are going to learn communication skills. We're going to learn about our beliefs. We're going to start developing our beliefs right there. Pattern of behavior is going to be developed right here. Our mindset, all of those wonderful things are now going to be formed right in this position, which will cause you and I to create a certain perspective. And then we're going to start making our decisions and living our lives and so forth. What was your family unit?
Where to begin? My parents were both immigrants to the United States. And so I say that to say that my upbringing felt very different than that of my classmates and people in my neighborhood. So my parents came to the US to live the American dream. And for them, education was the way to do that. So if we get educated, get the best possible education, we would be able to support ourselves and lift up, ourselves and our family. So that's I come from both sides of my family. A lot of poverty. My mother is from the Philippines. My father was born in Panama, but we are of Jamaican descent because a lot of folks from the Caribbean helped to build the Panama Canal. And so I bring that up to say that my parents were very strict. They, I believe the strictness was out of love. But the sense of discipline and I'd say the lack of freedom as I compared myself to those that I interacted with on a daily basis outside of my house, it was very, very different. I was taught to follow the mold, particularly when it comes to American values and what people deem as successful. So, in school, that's good grades. After school, it's okay. Make money, right? And the other, so it's a lot of discipline. Um, and I would also say a lot of high achieving. The bar, I never met the bar of my parents. I never got any words of affirmation, the five love languages, never received it. I never heard an I love you, and I never heard a good job. What I did hear was not bad, and how could you do better? That was my child.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of the West Indian homes that I'm familiar with in the Caribbean homes. You described all of our homes right there. And so education has been programmed into all of us as the way. But when I had my kids, I told them education is just one way, other ways. But everyone has to find their way. But yeah, you described every one of these West Indian and Caribbean homes. And so based on that, the decision of mom and dad as to how they managed with whatever insight and whatever trauma they have in their life. They made certain decisions, and based on their decisions, you are now going to make some interpretation of those decisions. That decision of the house in that strictness, how did it impact you?
Well, I'd say that because of the consequences of not achieving to their standards, I am grateful for the self discipline that I have. And I'd say that that got me into a really good college. I went to Harvard for undergrad, I went to Harvard Business School. So that strictness allowed me to check the boxes of again,
Uh-huh.
what everybody else says is success. I would also say that that impacted my inner voice. So, it has taken me a long time to change that inner voice, to reprogram so that I'm actually the voice in my head is nice to me. Right. So because of that, I would hear the voices of my parents. You're not good enough. Why didn't, if I got a 98 on a test, what happened to the other 2%? And so I'd say that no matter what achievement I have had in my adult life, I find an inner voice that has that negativity, that criticism that I need to become aware of. And I am now aware of it, taken many years, to then catch it immediately and transition into say, no, that's not my voice. And that's not true.
Yeah, and that's the key. One of the purpose of the journey is to teach us to live in the awareness. And when one lives there, we are able, as you say, to catch it when it comes.
There we
And
go.
it takes us time to get there because we are programmed that that is normal behavior, if you will, and to have those negativity thoughts. And that's true in this world, in this realm, in the natural realm for those programmers. But that's not the reality of life. When we began to question those things, that's when fun starts. So here you are. Like I said, you're describing our life, man. This is how our house was. And we all become overachievers. And I did not hear mom or dad say, I love you until I had my kids. So that
Right.
language
You're like
is
an
just
adult.
a part of how they work. And so we have to figure our way out. But here you are, man. You're doing all the programs that, trying to make sure that you're pleasing mom and dad because I did the same and I didn't. And I tell people all the time, I became an individual Ken Primus at 35 years old with 4 children. I became an adult. It's when I separated from my parents based on an incident that happened and I had to face them. And I had never really faced them. I always pleased them. Everything was for to please them. But we had a showdown because it came to my kids. And that was the day that I became Ken Primus when I began to live for me. And so you guys, blaming mom and dad has a shelf life, if you will. So here you are, man. You're dealing with the perfectionist within the aspect of your program because, you know, and the the language, as I said, the mindset limitations are there because it was implanted in you. And as you are now moving forward towards your independence, you're getting older. So how did you relate? Because you stated that your lifestyle was much different than your friends. What was your communication skills like with your friend?
When I was growing up,
Mm-hmm.
communication style, I would say that I tried to assimilate.
Uh-huh. Uh,
So I kinda tried to hide
yeah.
the stuff that was happening at home. I mean, I couldn't really share, a lot of it because nobody would understand. And then there's also discipline comes in physical forms for certain cultures. And so I'd say there was a little shame in that and embarrassment about what was happening at home. So I would say that how did I communicate with my friends? I hid most of the things that were different and tried to fit in.
Yeah. I always tell people if beating was a Olympic sports, the Caribbean people would always win.
Gold medal.
They'd surpass anything that anyone in their wildest dreams would ever come by because I'm familiar with what they call abuse in the United States. We call it everyday life. And so I'm familiar with how that was treated because back home in Guyana, it's very simple, the same type of mindset, if you will. As you're moving towards your life, we have this crossroad as we're getting old enough. We're out of college and we have to deal with, all the high school stuff that it goes there, and we suffer tremendous amount of trauma there as well. So we're at this crossroad, and it's called college, and we know that how that program is. You got the two crossroad: college or work. I know which one you're going to take because I know why you're going to take it. Because mom and dad will kill you if you try to go to work. So when you pick college, let me go ahead because I know what you did. When you pick college, what field did you pick and why did you pick that field?
Mhm. I'm gonna answer this question by telling you what field I didn't pick.
Okay.
I have played the violin since I was 5 years old.
Uh-huh.
And again, this is still the overachieving parent thing, right?
Yeah.
But I eventually grew to love music, and the violin became a part of my identity. Like, "Who are you?" "My name is Z, and I'm a violinist," right? And I did violin was just a huge part of my life, many, many hours of my life. I went to regular school, I went to music school, and all of this to get to achieve what is a very high level of achievement in classical music, which is to get into Juilliard. So, I got into Juilliard, did, like, worked really, really, really hard, but I had a problem, which is that I had a nerves problem. So all of the pressure that my parents put on me and my violin teacher and everybody and society, that I would say 50% of the time I would freeze under pressure. So I'm talking a competition, a performance. Imagine, an orchestra behind you, right? Like it just I 50% of the time I would freeze because I didn't have the breathing practices to help my nervous system the way I do today. All this to say that I chose not to pursue music. So that was like a huge at age I was 17, and I chose not to do it because I didn't want to be poor. Because I grew up in poverty, I understood housing instability, I understood the stresses that that caused on me and my family, and I didn't want to live that way. So, in answer to your question, I went to Harvard and I studied economics. And interestingly enough, I wanted to major in philosophy. Actually, I was going to do a double major, applied math and philosophy. And then my father basically told me I wasn't allowed to because philosophy wouldn't get me a job. I
Uh,
landed in economics.
I love how we call it, the best way I could say it is army volunteers, as the family would come and say, you're going to do this, you're going to volunteer for this. And, they have picked your route, if you will. And you got there and you got your paper. You did all the hard work. Your goal was not to be poor. You did that. You celebrated. You got this paperwork. Where did you go?
So after my degree, I graduated in a recession, interestingly enough, but managed to get a job. A lot of people didn't have a job that year.
Yeah.
I worked at a bank. I worked at Citigroup,
Hmm.
in credit card.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. Did marketing, business things, and I proceeded. Then I worked at American Express, where I did partnerships, focused on Latin America, but I was doing, you know, putting on a suit and going to work and feeling like had the walk. I was in New York City. I was young. I felt important.
As you are feeling important, because I tell people the material things is not the currency of the soul. And we can become as rich, and we have those guys that become multimillionaire and they're committing suicide all day long. And that tells us then that the program that they have been telling us about acquiring things, especially money, these guys should have never been committing suicide. So we're missing it. We're missing it somewhere. And again, that somewhere is who we truly are, that subconscious being, as psychologists would say, and as we know, the soul of the man or the spirit. So you're working in your big mahaf, as my friend called me, and you're making your money. You're getting your accolades, if you will, your achievement. Maybe a head nod from mom and dad that you did something, if they ever said anything, because they usually don't say anything. But you got where you feel you're okay. While you were there, what was happening to you? Because the internal language, your soul still, and he's not happy with what's going on. So he manifests this happiness. Again, as I said earlier, stress is one of those things. Anxiety is one of those things that will be manifesting. There's this constant little tapping inside of you going, this is not it. I'm not happy, as much as you started acquiring things. What was happening to you as you were rising, if you will, within your professional ranks?
Yeah, I would say that the earlier years were pretty fun in the work scenario.
Yeah.
It was as I started going up, 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 that the challenges started to arise. I spent most of my career in Silicon in that environment in the Bay Area. I would usually be the only woman in the room,
Hmm.
most often the only Black woman, Black person, and especially as I got more and more senior. And so what I started to experience was how people would treat me, which was not similar to those with different skin complexion. So, in my book, Black People Breathe, I share a lot of personal experiences of things that happened, everything from starting a new job and somebody coming up to me and saying, "Hey, are you the new diversity hire?" Kind of implying that the only reason that I got that job was because I was Black. Even I was like, "No, actually, I'm the new VP. Thank you." And I also found, just unequal treatment in terms of promotions, in terms of raises. And so I felt, well, Caribbean household, right? Got to work harder. You got to
Hmm.
prove to them.
Yep.
So I worked nights, I worked weekends, I did what everyone asked of me and more, right? And then it still just felt like it was never enough because the young, that term tech bro, right? The 20 something white guy that went kiteboarding over the weekend with the CEO, and that's where the deals happened, and you know
Yeah.
what I mean? That personal favor happens when you're not at work. So
Yeah.
I would say that my self-esteem started to be on a huge decline because I told you that voice in my head has been there since I was little, right?
Yeah.
Because it's my parents' voice of criticism. And now if I look around and the external circumstances are showing that no matter how hard you work, you're hitting this ceiling or people are going to still doubt you, that starts to make you feel bad. So
Hmm.
I'd say, yeah, it wasn't a tapping. It started to become like a torrential storm.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You're talking, and I'm remembering things about my rise as well. And as I got higher in the corporate world, the less representation as far as my color is there. And I remember a couple of stories. I have to give you this story. And again, mine was healthcare, and I got pretty good in it. I was at this event, and the lady that trained me was this white lady that when I first got into the place, I went to her and I said, I need your help. You've been in this business for X amount of years. I need your guidance. And she took me, man, and she trained me. And I had to make a presentation at this big presentation in front of all these healthcare people. And I am so nervous as ever. And I'm sitting next to her. And she looks at me and she says, I know what you're thinking because I'm the only black guy in there. And she looks at me and she said, she said, I know you. She said, you, when they're finished and doing your presentation, when you're done, they're going to say that was one of the smartest niggas.
Said that to you?
She said that to me, and she was right. She sitting. This is the woman. This was my mentor. She said, "This is what they're going to be thinking. That was one of the smartest niggas I've ever
Mm.
seen." And she said, "You get up there and show them who you are, and let their racism eat them alive." I was like, I got up, I did my presentation, and she was like my rock in that business because she trained me and she trained me well. And she was the one that supported me and helped me to grow within that business. And I studied hard to get my accolades, if you will. And I became one of the top in that particular field. But we as Black people do have other treatments as far as how people perceive us. One of my position was a network developer. I would develop the contracts for the HMOs. I would go sign physicians on the network. Called up a physician, went in to his office, spoke to him online, got there, showed up. My name is Primus. And he says, when I'm in his office waiting, he says, you're Black. And I looked at him and I said, what did you say? He said, oh, you're Black. You speak very good English for a Black man.
Yep. Mhm.
And so
That one.
this was a physician office looking at me. I'm in my expensive Armani, looking at him with my Mont Blanc pen. You got to look the part, girl. And I'm sitting there looking at him, going, "What?" And I looked at him and I said, "I'm going to teach you a lesson today." I said, "Behind me is millions of dollars that you have just lost. I am the one that makes the decision in this thing as to who come onto the network and why. And I will make sure that no other company picks you because I will tell them what you just did. And you will lose millions of dollars because of who you are." And I picked up and I left. And no one in that field ever hired him and signed him up as a physician on their network because they were all my friends. All the other competitions, if you will, were us. We were friends. We were talking. And so, but because of his mentality, looking at me and
Yeah.
say, I speak very good English for a Black man, was a height of insulting from, as a man to a man. But that's what we run in as individuals in the field. So we have many stories. I know you have yours and tons of it, but it's a reality that people need to hear. This is common, it's not anything. This is what Black people have to deal with on a daily basis, especially when you can.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that story. And one thing that I want to point out that might be different for other people's circumstances is in that particular situation, you were in a position of power,
Yeah.
right? You had a position where you could make a decision and impact his finances. And oftentimes when challenges happen, we are not in a position of power.
Yeah.
And in those moments, it is very difficult to manage our emotions.
Hmm.
So the reason I teach breath work, you were saying that the breath is the connection to, I don't know if you said the divine or the spirit world or kind of
It's the bridge between the natural and the supernatural realm. You
the
enter
natural and the
that by
supernatural.
that bridge.
Yes.
It is.
Well, I'll say that a micro moment
Yep.
is that the breath can be the pause
Yep.
between stimulus and response,
Yeah.
which is still, we're saying the same thing.
Hmm.
But I'm saying it in the context of one second
Yes.
of breathing in the moment because you could have had a rage filled, and I don't know how you shared that. Maybe you were stern but quiet, right?
Yeah.
But other people, when their nervous system kicks in, right? Because you feel like you're being attacked, right? Your sympathetic nervous system, your stress response, you could then start yelling. You could
Yes.
spit all sorts of insults. And depending on who you're speaking with, if they had the power over your income, if they have the power over your rights, right? Like your safety,
Mhm.
right? We were talking about the police before this call. That's challenging. And that's the sort of thing that I teach folks is how do you pay attention to your kind of immediate response versus, calming yourself down so that you can be your best self in that moment.
Yeah, I put it in this fashion. It's sons and children. A child will react. A
Mm,
son, an individual that has the revelation of who they are through inner work, learning that validation comes from them and not from the outside world. A child will respond as one seeking outside validation, that little space right there that you talk about. A child, when that data comes because of their need for outside validation, will react and they'll lose their minds and speak some wonderful languages and stuff like that. But a son, someone that has learned who they are, and aware of self and has seeked and learned of validation from internal side, they will take that little breath, that little space, and from there, they're going to respond because what are they responding from and with? With the wisdom that they have learned from their inner work, from the wisdom that they have gained from digging, going deep, learning certain things, and they will pull from that with that little space. It's just a micro space, but that happens so fast because one has reprogrammed self that is able to respond as a son. When we back in the day,
mm,
I was a
yeah.
child.
Well, a lot of people are children today.
Yeah,
They're very, age does not say that, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
In the context of work, though, that's what's interesting because a lot of people have, they go to their yoga class,
Uh-huh.
right? Like, they go to a meditation class. Most people
Yeah.
don't, right? Just the average person perhaps does not. But one of the things that I emphasize for folks is to bring that practice
Hmm.
into the workplace,
Yes.
right? And into your everyday life.
Yes.
So, like some people go to church, right? And so in church for that hour, you're feeling holy and connected to God, right?
Hmm.
But what about in the circumstance of in the middle of your day, you have back to back meetings and somebody says something that like gets under your skin or, makes you uncomfortable or you don't approve of or is offensive and you're already kind of stressed? Those are the moments when you need to have that pause,
Hmm.
when you need to have that micro space to connect with yourself because it's so easy. I describe it sometimes it's like you're spinning in a washing machine.
Yeah.
You just let yourself spin because that means you're totally controlled by the outside circumstances. So how can we find our center and remain grounded regardless of what's happening? And I know you're not in the US right now, but especially in the United States in this moment, right? With all of the things happening in this country. And yeah, a lot of people are leaving, but guess what? For a lot of folks, they don't have that option, right? For whatever reason, or they don't feel like they do. And in that case, how can you still remain grounded when the president is doing and saying things that are impacting not just our hearts and our emotions, but our bank accounts?
Yeah. I've been there and it was meditation that, because my problem was I had a serious anger problem because of my trauma as a young man. It manifested through anger. And so if someone would tick me off, I would give them usually, warning. I would say to them one or two times. And the third time I will not speak. I will act. And so I will
Mm,
stop you and warn you for the first two times. But the third time I will do what I say. And so my thing was anger. And so when I began to incorporate meditation into my life, meditation allowed me that split second decision because I had to learn how to program myself and I carried my state with me that got from my meditation, that state that you receive once you're in your meditation practice. There's a calmness, there's a slowing down of the thoughts, if you will. that allowed me, and I trained myself. So when someone said something that would have set me off, I remember the first time when I was getting into the meditation, someone said something to me and I recognized what was going on. And that split second, I was able to pull myself back and I said to him, "You are so lucky. Yesterday, I would have killed you. Today." Today, though, I have learned how to control self. But
Mm.
yesterday, you had said that to me. I didn't know this yet. And it was a day, it was one day. And I learned that lesson that morning. And from that day, it changed my life. And so that's what we were saying. One has to practice as you are teaching those about that. You have to practice that so that it's so familiar to you that when Trump and his boys do what they do and the rage comes up, you are carrying that state that Z is teaching you and talking about with you all the time. And that is a part of you because you've gotten to learn who you are. So here you are, man. Let's go back to you. I want you are with the corporate boys and you're seeing the two worlds, your world, the reality of your world, and the reality of theirs. And in that reality that you're looking at, you began to shrink, began to recognize that there's something going on and you began to shrink down. As you are going and getting lower, if you will, how did you make out, what did you do, Z? Because I know I know what you're talking about because as you rise higher, you see it plainly, you know, but here is a black woman, even more so. How did you manage?
I mean, the truth is that I didn't. The truth is that I broke down into, that I hit a rock bottom that impacted my mental health and my physical health. So I worked harder, I kept trying, I kept, I was doing all the things and maybe on the outside it looked fine, but inside I was not okay. And I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I
Wow.
had constant anxiety. And ultimately, my doctors told me something needed to change with my stress levels. So what I did was I quit. Actually, is for the first time in my life, I made decisions for me rather than for other people. Earlier, you started talking about parents, right, and family, and perhaps distancing. That was a moment when I decided to choose me over my family. Because all of the decisions that I had made were based on them and my ability to support them. That is my cultural upbringing, and that is what I did. I obeyed, and I was the best daughter ever until I wasn't. Until I quit my job and I said, "I am choosing me. Y'all are all adults. You can take," because I don't have children.
Yeah.
So this is me taking care of adults.
Yeah.
And I said, "All of you can take care of yourselves. I need to take care of me right now." And I quit. I went to India. I did my yoga teacher training. I got deep into breath work. I became a sound healer. And I spent 2 years traveling the world learning holistic healing practices. And I had never felt better in my entire life. That is when I found me. And that is when I chose me.
That's a powerful story, guys. And those of you that are listening to us, that's the decision that you have to make at some point. You're going to have to choose yourself. That's the decision that you will have to come to, and you're worth it. You're worth it, man. You're worth the yes. I'm going to choose me because when you start that journey, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, hard journey, but it's messy. It's clean. It's beautiful. It's pain because you're excavating all of your darkness and learning how to walk through, bringing in new tools, assisting you, ripping away all those little layers that are there and causing you to face yourself, sitting down in a place of solitude, learning how to be in that place, learn how to be a place of power in the silence, in the noise, in the pain, the crying, the beauty of you. Make the choice and go and follow self, man. It is the best thing that you can do for yourself. As you are traveling India, having the best time of your life, as you stated, and you're learning and applying all of these principles What did you begin to see in you, Z? What was it that those traumas that were holding this young girl, that she got some programming from mom and dad, especially the negative program? What other things did you begin to notice? And what tools did you bring in to help you to navigate overcoming them, if you will?
We started talking about self-love, and what I learned was that I didn't have much of it, that I was putting everybody else, in front of myself, and so I needed to get to know myself. I remember a powerful practice I learned in India was mirror work, which is looking in the mirror, looking into your own eyes, and having a conversation. It was like an awkward first date,
Hmm.
like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
And in fact, I will just say that a beautiful, powerful meditation practice is the "Who am I?" Right? Who am I? And that is not, my profession. It is not my relationship to other people in my family. It is who am I when you strip of all of that. So I'd say that that was a really powerful practice of coming to love me and to love all parts of me, even the parts of me that perhaps I had rejected in the past because of other people. So that's the big one. I would say paying attention to how I feel. So noticing how I'm feeling in every moment. I think you had said earlier that when you are aligned, you feel great. And when you're not aligned, you're stressed, you're sick, etc. And so paying and now, even when I'm starting to get sick, just like the tiniest bit, my mindfulness practices allows me to say, ooh, there's a little something. And I
Yes.
can nip it in the bud immediately and be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to sleep today, or I'm going to say no to these things. And I would say saying no was another huge practice for me of determining what are the things that give me energy and what are the things that take energy away from me. Having mindfulness about that and the knowledge that I have a choice. Now, granted, sometimes you have a job, you have to do the things at the job, but even then, you're choosing to go to that job. A lot of you are like, I have to. Well, you could choose other things, right? Now, maybe not immediately, not today, but realizing that I do have a choice. Yeah. I also want to share apologies. I got to go at the top of the hour. We're good.
Okay.
So,
It All that she just said, I hope you guys are listening. I hope you're listening. Just go back and listen to it. That's important with the self-love, learning who you are and becoming familiar. You'll learn about boundaries and all those different things. And no is a part of that in your developing of your boundaries and so forth. Those are things to protect you as you're moving through life. So as you're gaining all of your insights and so forth, how did you end up to the book? How did that manifest? And then how did you
mm,
transition to the things that you do today?
yeah. So what happened is I spent 2 years traveling the world, learning all these things, feeling amazing, and then I got a corporate job again. So I went back into corporate,
Yeah,
and I noticed that corporate America had not changed, but I had changed.
yeah,
So all the people were still saying the things and doing the things that were offensive and problematic, but my reaction was different. They could not affect me. That coincided with 2020. So not only the pandemic, but also George Floyd, the Black Lives
yeah.
Matter movement, and being one of the only Black executives at the company that I was at put me into a role of, I'll say I was voluntold to be the DEI person. I mean, there was a DEI person, but suddenly a lot of my time was being spent on this topic. And again, dealing with people saying offensive things. So I was using my breathing practices to calm my nervous system when I was angry, when I was anxious, when I was upset. And I realized that I was not alone in this, that most Black people in corporate were dealing with this. And so I started teaching workshops on the side. How do you mindfulness to heal from microaggressions? How do you build up the courage to rise up in the ranks when they're making you feel like you're worthless? How do you deal with that? Right. And so I started teaching these workshops. And then I just had a conversation with somebody that said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I was like, "Why you have to be famous?" And really what happened is that then led to additional conversations, and the next thing you know, I had competing offers for my book, Black People Breathe. Black People Breathe, I share 33 mindfulness and breathing practices for Black people, all people of color, and really all people to deal with the challenges that happen. Now, it's focused on racism, so I share personal experiences of microaggressions and racism, but specific breathing practices that you can do when you're anxious, when you are tired, when you get stopped by the police, when you're treated poorly at work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a valuable tool for us because the black race is the most traumatized race on the planet, and period. And I've done a lot of traveling all over the world, and the black race is the most traumatized. That's why you see the black man, when a cop pulls up, or any black person, because of the trauma that they have and suffered with police officers and those type of folks, you'll see them reacting. And so that's where they need to train these police officers. So when certain black men react a certain way, run or whatever, don't kill him. Just realize that he is reacting based on trauma, and you have to figure out a way how
Yes.
to manage that. So, but that's teaching as well. But you know how that goes.
Mm,
As you are doing this, because I want people to know, and you guys, I always tell you, get books, get her book, buy her book, get into this. Those, I know I have my brothers and sisters out there, buy the books, because what is happening in America, you're going to need our book. Let me put it that way. So get our book and learn those breathing techniques. Learn how to handle yourself in each one of those different scenarios that will come about in your life. Learn it, practice it. You have to practice it, practice, practice. And as you practice, you will become more familiar. So when the situation arises, what you do is going to be like second, just normal. And because you've been programming yourself how to manage that particular crisis. Buy the books. We're going to put all of our links so that you guys can get to her. And I know I have a couple of corporations that listen to me because they talk to me. You guys bring her in, have a conversation, talk about your culture, how to manage culture, because the culture needs to be in a space healthy so that all your staff will be able to manage and be safe and feel safe when they're there. Z, talk to me. You have a mic, because I know you have to run. You have a mic, right? And that mic
mm,
is tied into all 8 billion people on the planet. And you have a chance to say something to them. What would
mm,
you say?
At the end of the day, I believe that this life is about centering love. And so, what I particularly mean by that is first starting with self love, starting with take care of yourself, pay attention to how you're feeling, be proactive about your self care and the things that make you feel good and healthy from a full cup. That is when then you can offer that love to others, whether that's in the workplace, to your family, etc. But you are your best self when you love yourself and take care of yourself. And I think if you start there, all the other things, whether it is financial, social, professional, etc., are going to flow from there, but it must start there. So there's a mantra in my book that's today I choose me. Today I choose me.
I love that. I'm going to leave it there. Guys, again, we're going to provide the link. Buy the books. I always tell you, offer books to people. I always tell you also, buy several books, get a bunch of your friends together, and you read chapters, one chapter, and then you get together and talk about it. Create little book clubs, and you'll be able to see how you are going to impact each other. Get her book. Make sure you get her book. Give it to present, especially to the young Black folks that are out there today in this particular setting that is being taking place on this United States and around the world. Make sure that they are learning what they need to learn in order for them to be safe. Z, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure to have a chat with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully, you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.